Welcome back, folks, to another episode of Business from the Bass Boat, powered by X2 Power on the Serious Angler Network. And guys, today, just thinking through here, we're working into holiday season, and probably many of you have decided what you're going to fish next year, or maybe you are like myself, taking a little bit longer here, thinking through what makes sense, kind of going into 2024. Obviously, there's a lot of options out there, and a lot of turmoil in the fishing industry, and just kind of basically just going to do a solo show today talking about, is now a good time to jump into that higher level? So is now a good time to try and go become a pro, or are you a local guy and maybe this is the year you jump up to that next regional level, right? Whatever that looks like for you. I just was thinking through where we kind of stand today and the pros and cons of making that next step right now. That's what this episode's about. Quick solo show before we jump on the road to get back to Colorado for Christmas and all of that stuff going on. So, hope everyone's having a great time there, or great holiday season as we get into that, and kind of are planning your 2024 season. So, kind of what I've got down here are just, I mean, the basic cons right now, or the negatives you're hearing in the fishing industry, right? So right now, there's a lot of talk on, you know, is this league going to be around? Are things, falling apart economically? What do things look like there? And I think those are kind of the headwinds, right, for anglers right now. Is um, sponsor dollars certainly seem to be on the decrease. There's a couple companies that have bumped up in their spending, but for the most part, in conversations I've had with anglers and different industry folks, right, dollars, as times slow down, marketing dollars seem to shrink first, right? And so that's kind of happening right now. So that's a headwind that a lot of guys are facing. Is, okay, I'm going to have to do as much tournament fishing if that's their MO, but I'm going to have less support on the back end. That makes things tough. Fuel prices are projected to grow in 2024. Obviously, we've seen fluctuations there, but that's something that is real, right? Like, you're spending a lot of money traveling to these tournaments, a lot of boat fuel, all of that stuff. And then I think that's just the other side of things. If you are working a regular job, mixed in with everything else, like, there's been a lot of job cuts here lately. Now the job market is still fairly strong from a average standpoint, but just you can kind of tell things are starting to certainly slow down. And I wasn't super tied in at all to the economy in 2008 or things like that, but I don't think we're going to be in for something necessarily as bad as that time frame. And through conversations with folks that really were in it through that time frame. But anyways, so those are kind of the cautions right now. I think too, the what is the future of bass fishing industry look like, right? I mean, we're seeing how much of a factor YouTube is, influencers, all that sort of stuff is spreading the dollars out in the industry. And that's a factor. And then the other factor is just the health of the organizations that are running these tournaments. Where do they stand on a financial standpoint? And does that, if you put all your eggs in a basket and you're working really, really hard to build yourself in an organization, and then that organization collapses or something like that, of course you have the ability to change and potentially start over. But it's just a scary thought to really push everything, and then the league disappears or gets slashed or something like that. And I'm not saying that specifically. That sounds like a direct dig to Major League Fishing because they're cutting up their top tier, but that could happen in any one of these situations, right? And it's all kind of just their model on how their income comes in, whether it be through sponsor dollars or subscription, all of that. So those are kind of the fear things. And and part of that, I think I'll wrap up the end on my thoughts. But anyways, kind of to the pro side of things, things that I've thought about here lately that, you know, maybe I didn't take into full consideration as I make my decisions here going into 2024. But what do things look like competition wise out there? I think if you're going to go do something and you're going to put your head into it completely and give yourself the time frame to do it, it doesn't really matter. I think you can go really far with simply that mindset and that work ethic. But I do think the benefit to kind of pushing right now, and I'm not even saying just 2024. I think there's potentially another window because I think interest rates are still going to stay high. They're going to come down. Fed is saying rates are going to cut in 2024, projecting rate cuts. But with that, I think that depending on how long this takes to kind of reset and slow down, 2025 could be a really good time. 2026 could be a really good time. Just think in the next couple of years, there's going to be more folks who are maybe weary, right? And not wanting to go push to that next level the same way things happen investment wise and everything else of just the majority kind of gets nervous and all this stuff. So those who are pushing during that time can be rewarded. And this was through a conversation I had with a buddy who's deciding on what to fish in 2024. And it's like, that's a good point. There's potentially going to be less full time competitors going forward. We've already seen a reduction on the opens, the number of opens anglers there are. We've seen the Tackle Warehouse Invitationals, a push of how many folks are going to fish that. We don't know the numbers on that yet. And their system, they can kind of pull way down the list of things. But it just seems like there's less happening than the boom years, right? The last couple of years was overdone. And so, I mean, that's the typical Warren Buffett quote, right? Like, be fearful when others are greedy, and be greedy when others are fearful. And that's kind of one thought to certainly have right now. And with everything else, is like a lot of people are fearful right now. I think anyway, going into 2024, 2025, and I think everyone's situation is a little bit different and where they're at financially, work wise, all of that. But just a good point that I thought of. If you are looking to make the jump right now, it may not be a horrible time because I think that it's gonna be tough in the next couple of years, and therefore guys just kind of drop off based on economic situations. Um, Another thing I think we're seeing right now is a lot of guys retiring. I think there's a couple reasons here, but as we have seen forward facing, and there's always young guys coming up, but I think as we have seen forward facing take off and play a role in almost every tournament now, it seems like places are fisheries are being able to be broken down so much quicker, and fish are found that weren't normally found, and there's less of a competitive advantage for folks who have been fishing for a long time. There's still an advantage, but there's less of a advantage for the folks who have been to the St. Lawrence River 100 times, right? Because yes, they have all these sneaky hidey holes and whatever else, but as we've seen, young anglers who have put their boat on there for the first time or the first of 3 times are winning some of these events. And so the younger generation we've seen adopt forward-facing sonar much faster and sooner. And I think that that is cool because it's giving life to younger anglers right now, where like it seemed like the prime has been later. And that's not to say that prime still isn't there. I feel like the prime in a lot of things is like your 30s, 40s, maybe into low 50s on like all sorts of high productive work and all that kind of stuff. Like that seems to be the time frame. But when folks are getting into the elite series and things in their early 20s and these really young ages, I think it's pushing out some guys right now that have been on the fence on retiring or not retiring. And then when things slow down sponsorship dollar wise, and they're maybe not as competitive as they were from a tournament standpoint because of forward facing sonar and other things, I think guys retire sooner than they maybe would have, right? Like there's always the guys who seem to stay there until their 70s, and that's awesome. Love to see it. But at the same time, at some point, I think some of those folks are kind of just done. And therefore that opens more slots up, right? So so long as the leagues are still around. But that opens opportunities for folks who maybe wouldn't have had that opportunity before, because I do think we're going to kind of see in the future just a prime window of anglers being younger. So just a projection, no idea. Things may completely change here in the coming years. But I think at the end of the day, it all kind of depends on your long term goals, anyways. And I think that those change. But as you kind of go through life and work your way into what makes the most sense, the the thought process is like things just take time, right? Like there's very few success stories where the guy qualifies for the elites in 2 years or a year, and then it just takes off his career from there, right? Like it's just it takes a really long time anyways. So maybe it doesn't matter what the economics are like right now if you realize that this is going to be a 5, 7, 10 year journey if you're trying to make it to that top tier. And I think you can take that same approach with any tier. Like you could be the club guy fishing your local Tuesday nighters, and you're like, I'm going to work my way into the regional this year. I'm going to jackpot one of them. Maybe I'm going to fish a couple of them, like, and just slowly wake her up. I think that's still a fantastic method to go for not putting too much risk on the table, um, and not potentially, getting too far out over your skis from a um, credit card debt and all that sort of stuff standpoint. Not spending too much money, and potentially putting yourself or your family at risk with that. So I think having that long term goal approach and and then also being realistic on your odds and that sort of stuff with things, not to say you can't go and beat anybody on any given Sunday, but like everything else, living in odds and thinking through what the actual odds are of getting stuff. I don't think that's wrong either. And I can certainly be sometimes over analytical from that standpoint. Sometimes you just got to roll with your gut. But like the idea of thinking through your odds right now of making it, I think is worth considering. And again, not a pro by any means. Just my thoughts on things right now as the industry stands. But overall, if you're in a good financial place and you kind of considered these next couple of years as being a time frame for you to go get it, like I think it's a great time, because at the end of the day, I think there's a lot of guys who are scared and going to be kind of tightening back in the next couple of years. And yeah, so those are my thoughts going into 2024. Love to hear everyone's thoughts on their end. At the end of the day, it's all going to come down to you and your decisions as the angler on what makes the most sense for you right now. But I just thought this would be a good discussion starter. Would like to know your thoughts and comments on YouTube, or send us a message on Serious Angler, on our Instagram account, on whether you think now is a good or a bad time to try and become a pro angler. Those are my thoughts, pros and cons of it all. Hope everyone has a wonderful Christmas with the family. Hopefully you're doing something fun, and excited. It's been pretty mild here, and I have been tied up as far as getting out and going fishing, but I am going to try and put the boat on a couple of places here in January in Idaho and see what I can do. So excited for that. Hope everyone has a wonderful Christmas and everything else. Happy holidays. So with all that, we are out of here.